I believe we have just one more session, and that is going to bring us back to our Alvanon hosts. So Christina and Kimberly from Alvanon will be doing a masterclass, fusing. Slate for me. Sorry, my words aren't coming out at this point. Fusing tradition with innovation and DPC realities. Christina, Kimberly, very nice to meet you. We have not met before. It's good to see you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you too, Joshua. Thank you so much for hosting today. Yeah, we're excited to get started and share, a little bit of technical world that we live in.
Well, fabulous. Tell me a little bit about what you're going to be covering today.
Yeah, so my team in particular, we're part of the consulting team at Alvanon, but we dig really deep into all things technical. So we're going to be looking at a little bit of the explorations that we've done in AI and what we're finding in that, and then we're also talking about using those foundational tools and building that bridge over into 3D. So that's what we're going to be digging into today.
Great. There's been a lot of conversations over the course of the day that have been talking about the fact that fit is kind of your contract with your customer. And if you're, and in fact, there was, I guess, an article that came out from the BBC that H&M is admitting that their fit is all over the place, and that's been a problem with their, especially customers that are buying online. And so it matters and to the consumer quite a bit. And that's my personal belief is that that's where the consumer makes the decision to buy most clothing, is when they try it on and they see if it fits. And if your company doesn't have good fit standards, then you're not going to be as successful as other companies. So I hope you're going to be showing us how to solve some of those problems today.
Well, we hope so. We're all about fit standards.
Fantastic. Well, great. Well, I will let you take it. I'm excited to hear what you have to say, and off you go. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Joshua. Okay, well, welcome everyone who's staying with us. It's been so great listening to the wonderful presentations yesterday and today, because they're truly exciting and inspiring to hear from so many great participants that we've had, and the progress and accomplishments that are being made in DPC. It's really, really inspiring to hear. So we're happy to be a part of it. We are wrapping up today with a very technical session, as I mentioned earlier, so we're going to dig right in. We're going to start a little bit today with talking about AI. We recognize the impact that generative AI can have as a catalyst for creativity and innovation and design. And we also know, as it comes to the technical aspect of executing a design, there still needs to be a grounding in the design, down to really making real clothes for real people, then, we can get there, right? And I think we've heard that as well from the speakers over the last 2 days. And even as Joshua was just mentioning about, if you have good standards in place, then it will certainly get you there. And so we'll be discussing our explorations of AI a little bit here. And we'll also be talking about bridging technical tools into 3D and using a cohesive size set to create an improved garment grade and what that looks like. We really love sharing our learnings in digital product creation from a technical perspective. And we love hearing back from our clients as well, because that's how we all learn and get better. All right, so let's jump in here and just take a look at what we looked at in terms of generative AI. With the help of our extended team, we explored several different AI engines, and today we're going to look at just a few of them, a few examples, and share some of our observations about each one. We knew we wanted to create a jumpsuit design for this presentation, and so that's where we started. We used simple text prompts to start. And specifically, we started with 4 very simple prompts, progressively adding more detail to each one, eventually also adding visuals depending on the AI engine requirement and capability that we happen to be using. We saw some progressions with each prompt, but we very quickly realized that a great deal of time could be spent modifying the prompts. So, we certainly recognize the potential of AI as design inspiration. So in this very first video that we're going to look at here is some stable diffusion. And it is an open source text to image model. And this particular video is showcasing the workflow of how stable diffusion works and our results at the end. The results are controlled by prompts and other input with different plugins. And there are two most common interfaces that are shown in this particular video. Some of the pros, it's quick and easy to generate with large batches of images. A lot of plugins are available, and you are able to maintain the body shape and style of the garment, which was something that we were very interested in, probably from the technical side of us mostly, I suppose. If we were going to say any cons, is difficult to generate new styles from a current design. And you know, that would be something to consider. So it really was a progression based on the prompts, and that was really minimal. And the other thing about it is you really do need a powerful hardware to run it. So this next one that we're going to look at is Midjourney. It also generates images from text prompts as well. And again, showcasing the workflow of how Midjourney works and our results in the end. We followed the same process as in the previous video, but we did have to add even more detailed prompts to achieve the results that we were looking for. And the results really are controlled by the prompts. Midjourney was easy to use to get good results. It can run pretty much anywhere from any platform, even on a mobile phone. And if you're interested in the model appearance of it, the quality was very high on human faces. The cons about it is that you cannot maintain the shape and style easily, which, as I mentioned above, you had to get really detailed in the prompts in order to achieve the result that you wanted. The other thing, it will only generate 4 images at each time, and Midjourney is a paid platform as well. So from the little bit of experimenting that we did, and just those 2 examples, we did some other, but those are 2 that we showed you. We decided to actually take different pieces. We didn't find one image that was complete inspiration. So we decided to take different images from 2 different platforms. And we kind of built that as the inspiration that to settle in on the design that we wanted to do for the jumpsuit. Now, because there's no technical aspect to AI, of course, then we needed to revert, to make those technical decisions for the garment as we were creating the sketch, in terms of how much ease there would be over the body, to consider that, what would be the opening closure, for getting the garment on. A lot of things we saw in AI when we were asking for front and back images, for example, we might generate a front and back image, but they wouldn't be connected. So it'd be a completely different design on the back than on the front. So, we had those details to figure out how we wanted to do it, the typical things that you would do in the tech design world, figuring the fabric, the inner lining, the construction details, all important. Now, we have created here a technical flat sketch, and we recognize and understand that once we had a design idea, we certainly could have taken the images, jumped into 3D software to generate the design. And we chose to follow the process of creating the technical sketch first, because the point of what we want to talk about today is focusing on traditional technical tools and bridging those foundational tools into DPC. So not that you couldn't do that starting from 3D, but we chose this particular path for this demonstration today. So let's just talk a little bit more about bringing those standards into 3D. And so we're going to go back to the beginning here just a little bit. As you know, Alvanon, of course, is all about fit tools and standards. And, when we're coming into 3D, it really is about bridging the great technical tools that you might be used to working with in the physical world or the tactile sense into 3D. And we all know that trust is a huge element around working in 3D for a lot of people, and you need to trust what you see, but most importantly, you need to understand what you see so you can make the right decisions for the physical product that you're actually creating, because we are creating real clothes for real people. And the end goal is still the actual production of those physical garments. So coming into 3D, you can certainly trust that the dimensions and shape of the virtual alba form is truly a digital twin to the physical alva form. So that's again bridging a traditional tool, the mannequin, and bringing it right into 3D and knowing that it is an exact replica. And further to that, understanding that as you're looking at poses, any poses that are using the special development process that we have, the polygon mesh, is designed so that we're keeping human-like features in mind, and that's including attention to body deformation as the result of muscle movement when the body changes poses. So we're very interested in all of that from a fit perspective. So when we talk about that standardized avatar, just a couple words on what that means. And I'm sure that many of you have done, work with us or have been in any of our workshops. You may have heard this message, but I think it's a really important one to repeat when we talk about DPC. So using a standardized avatar really does mean using an avatar that best represents your customer's size, shape, and proportion. And that means aspects that cannot be changed, because that's where you get your core size accuracy. It ensures consistent results, and it's a consistent tool for all the users, both internally and externally, no matter where your suppliers are, and regardless of the 3D system that they might be using. It truly is a digital twin to the fit form, and that is an essential foundational tool. If we look at what that means visually compared to an adjusted parametric avatar, there is limitations to what you can adjust. So if you look at the visuals here, where we tried to adjust a parametric avatar to match one of the standards. In this case, we use the Japan women. And we were trying to make the adjustments, but we could only take it so far. You can see differences in shoulder slope and body proportion, stance, all of which will affect fit in the end. So, establishing a standard that truly is a standard that can't be edited and adjusted is really important because of the limitations to it. So when we talk about a standardized avatar as a foundational tool, that's what we're talking about. So let's move in and talk a little bit more now, moving other tools into 3D and then walking through that process. We've settled in on this final design. And, as I said, we recognize that we could have started this in 3D software, but we wanted to talk about the importance of then taking this and this as a pattern against block patterns. So that's especially important, understanding the avatar and the blocks and how you can get to creating an authentic digital library in the long run that you can leverage in 3D, resulting in a more efficient workflow in the long run with a consistent, repeatable fit as well. So, right from the start, we knew that we would be using the North American women's size 6 in our standard series. And then because we're creating the jumpsuit, we also knew that we would be using 2 blocks in combination to do that. Our blocks have been created progressively from each other, and they are mapped directly to that form. So if you're operating from a true block library, then typically that's what would happen, meaning you can line up the waist placements because of the way they've been developed, and you pretty much have an excellent starting point for capturing what you would need for, say, that vertical trunk on the body. So, it really is a great way to work. And the blocks that we're using have been developed progressively, and being that they are mapped to the form and size and shape, we're showing them here in 3D, but they've been developed in a hybrid process, right? So a process of starting in 3D, using 2D pattern maker and going back and forth until we get to that physical sample validation. So what we see here in a block, we have also validated in that physical sample as well. So now we have the avatar and the blocks ready for use in 3D. So Kim, as we start going, can you take us through the development steps for the jumpsuit conversion?
Yeah, sure. So this is a pattern overlay showing how I started with the top and developed the jumpsuit top. What you're seeing in orange is the block pattern back and front, and what you're seeing in gray is the jumpsuit front, back, yoke, waistband pieces, and then the collar is added there also. And what you'll notice when you're looking at this is that those block patterns, the jumpsuit patterns do align with the block. We're looking at the neck shape. We did put the shoulder seam forward a little bit on the jumpsuit. So that's why when you're looking at the back yoke overlaid on the back, you'll see that the shoulder extends just a little bit further than the block does. But then on the front, we're taking away some of that shoulder. So these are aligned at the center front and at the bust level. And like Chris said, we aren't taking anything away from the length. The waistband is going to be hitting so that the natural waist is going to be about a half an inch above that lower waistband seam. And Chris, if you could take me to the next slide, I'll show you the evolution of the pattern of the pants. So here we're starting with the trouser block and adding a little bit of ease over body at the hip for the extra fullness and gathers at the back waist. And the waist at the front and the back have been lowered to compensate for the waistband that's coming down a little bit. And then the rise has been adjusted, giving a little bit extra room in the rise and ease, and then through room to accommodate the ease over body that's been added at the hip level. And then the pattern on the far right is just showing the pleats that have been added. So the pattern is folded out, showing the pleat development. This can be a little complex to look at, for some people. I've been a pattern maker for over 30 years. But this is something that, as a technical designer or technical team, looking at these overlays, looking at the design pattern overlaid onto those block patterns and, getting familiar with what the relationships are between the two.
Excellent. And, we want to mention too that, we're doing these corrections in Optitex. We work in several different 3D softwares that Kim's going to tell you about here shortly. So we're working in different systems for the work that we do as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. And these overlays are also of the jumpsuit over the block. And here in the first one on the left, I'm aligning the yoke and the front to the high point of the shoulder of the block. And I'm doing that so that I can check to make sure that the shoulder slope has been maintained from that original block, because that block truly does map back to the virtual Alvaform and in the fit. So I want to maintain that shoulder slope. The second image on the top of the pants is showing the overlay of the jumpsuit pants over the block, but this time I've aligned them at the rise so that you can see that the front and the back rise shapes do relate back to that block. So much work has been put into those blocks to make sure that that fit is good. So it's really good to maintain that. And then the third image is showing the fronts and backs overlaid again, but this time they're aligned at center front, and then I've walked them together at the shoulder seam. And then this allows me to look at the shape of the armhole and how it relates back to the block, and then also the neckline. So after the first pattern was developed, we took it into 3D, and we didn't have our fabric tested yet that we were going to use for the jumpsuit. So we used a fabric from the default library that most closely resembled the fabric that we were going to use in the jumpsuit. And we simulated it in 3D so that we could check to make sure that this is the fit that we wanted. In this image video, I'm showing you how we are adding a red line to the reference lines on our pattern. And when we were looking at the overlays previously, I should have pointed out that all of our block patterns have reference lines that map to the virtual Alvaform. And when we develop a pattern, then we keep those reference lines on the pattern so that we can highlight them and look at them in a transparent view and make sure that our garment is still in complete alignment with the form and that we're maintaining that balance. And this is, I think the video is repeating, showing it a second time. Oh no. Yeah. I think we're looking at it again. can move forward,
Okay.
Chris. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
So after looking at it in 3D, what I've done here is I've simulated, I actually rendered it. We don't usually do that in the development process. Rendering takes a lot of time. A lot of times we're just looking at screenshots or looking at the actual garment in 3D. But for you, we rendered the images and they're on the left of the front and back. I also put a little screenshot of the physics in here, just showing that this is not the actual jumpsuit fabric. This is from the Browseware library. So we did use Browseware for this simulation, and the images on the right is just showing you some of the other ways that we use the 3D software to check the fit. Poses is a really big thing. Being able to lift the arms and move and bend, and especially in a jumpsuit, being able to sit. So we can look at it in the different poses, and then also looking at the different angles and stuff to evaluate the shapes in the armholes, the necklines, the rise, and so forth. Turning on the wireframe feature of the avatar so that you can see through it and see the shapes of the underarm in relationship to the armhole, and then even the rise shape. That's really critical.
Okay.
So for fabric testing, fabric is just a huge topic still. And for this project, we were really excited to be able to do some more fabric testing. And this time what we decided to do is we used three different places to test our fabric. So the jumpsuit fabric that we selected is a plain weave. It's 85 poly, 15% elastane. 111 GSM is the weight, and then according to our measurements, we had a caliper and it was 0.2 millimeter thickness. And I just put a little image of it there so that you can see the color and the drape of it. So we sent the fabric to be tested at three different places. Browseware did testing for us, and Vizoo, and we've used Browseware and Vizoo before. And then this time we were really excited because we wanted to use SETI, and that is a new company that, and maybe many of you have heard of it. SETI Textura uses artificial intelligence actually to do the testing, and we were so excited about it because let's see here. I should get to my notes to make sure I get the right thing here. So the artificial intelligence piece of the SETI testing is actually the fabric scan. And so you scan your own fabric, and you need to have be able to have a caliper, do the thickness, and then also have the weight of it. And it's very cost effective, but the AI is actually reading that scan, and that's identifying the physical fabric properties from the construction, the yarn diameter, and the structure. And then the adding the fabric type, the thickness, and then the GSM, it's just additional information that you're providing to sculpt that fabric. So these are the results that you see in this chart, and you can see there's a lot of differences from Browsware's testing, Vizoo, and then to SETI.
Yeah, there's
And
so many variables around fabric setting, right, Kim?
right,
Around
and
fabrics.
these are
Yeah.
the variables. What we're looking at here are when we pulled up the physical. We loaded the fabrics into Browseware, and then we opened up the fabric properties, and then read the physics, or all of it, so that you could see a comparison within one software.
Should we go on to the next slide?
Yep, let's go on to the next slide.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we're looking at here is the jumpsuit simulated in these fabrics. On the left, so I should preface that with we tested the fabrics using Browseware Style 3D, or Browseware, SETI, and Vizoo. Internally, we use three or more different 3D softwares, and what we chose to use this time is Browseware, Style 3D, and Clo. So what we're looking at here on the left is the fabric that was tested by Browseware. They were able to give us file formats that we could bring into Browseware and into Style 3D. So we could look at the fabric in two different 3D softwares, the same fabric physics and appearance. So you're seeing differences in the drape and the physical appearance, the color. In the middle is the fabrics that were tested by SETI, and they provided file formats that we could bring into Browseware, Style 3D, and Clo. And on the right is the fabric that was tested by Vazoo. And again, they were able to give us formats that could be brought into Browseware, Style 3D, and Clo. So some of the things that you should keep in mind is different 3D softwares have different ways of applying that fabric to the avatar. You know, whether it's wrapping, you know, there's going to be different algorithms. So even having the same fabric, taking it into a different software, you're going to get slight variations and differences in that appearance. Also, within this different softwares, there's lighting settings and background color and render settings and types and everything that's going to impact that visual appearance. The other thing that we talk about internally is the user difference too, just between the three of us on our team that are in the 3D softwares. We all arrange, simulate, and do things differently. So it's really important to have those you know, those user guidelines outlined in some sort of a virtual quality standards manual, so that you're kind of all working on the same page. It's interesting, isn't it?
It really is. And, you know, when you talk about all of the variables, that it's just so important. And, you know, it was really, I thought it was really great to hear some of the processes that are in place by some of the presenters to really hone in on these kinds of variables. But it's super important to talk about and be aware of for whatever system you happen to be using.
Mhm. Right.
Thanks, Kim.
Let's look at the next video. This is just Liz was using Clo to show you when she brought the fabrics into Clo. She's simulating the jumpsuit. So we thought we'd show you a little capture of here. She's adding the collar to the jumpsuit, and you see the jumpsuit, and it's in two different colors, and it kind of makes you wonder why. But the pieces that are in the lighter blue have actually been frozen because they've already been simulated. So we work on things in stages. And once something gets simulated and we like the look of it, you can freeze it so that it doesn't change when you continue with the rest of the simulation process. So here she had to set symmetry to the collar and then bring the collar into the 3D area. And then she will arrange it on the form. Clo has the dots for arrangement. And then she's going to sew it onto the neckline. Freezing those pieces helps to prevent the collision. And then you can unfreeze it at the end. So now she's going to simulate. So the collar gets sewn on. And if, let's see,
Go
I'm going
to
to
the
jump
next
to the
one.
next video.
Yeah.
We'll show you how that collar is on there. And so now we're going to get it to fold down. And so first you want to make sure that on that pattern, you have a fold line where you want it to fold. And then she's selecting the fold arrangement. And in the 3D window, she's going to select on that internal line. And then she's going to use a 360 for a fold angle. I think the default is 180. And just for reference, you know, if you had a 0 fold angle, it would fold inward. And then she'll simulate it. And then she was noticing that you're seeing the wrong side of the fabric on the collar. So she's right-clicking and flipping it so that the right side is facing out. She's also using strengthening, noticing that the collar is a little bit flimsy. Um, to strengthen something, it's kind of like a cheat in the 3D window. It doesn't really change the fabric properties, but it will temporarily make the fabric more stiff. And then she's going to simulate it again and use the cursor to pull the collar down so that it sits along the fold lines. We always like to just give you a little bit of a peek into the different 3D softwares.
Okay, excellent. Let's jump in and look at some poses and fitting.
Yeah. Yeah, I was showing you some poses earlier that we looked at in the first pattern. If you saw Jason's presentation yesterday, he showed these new fit evaluation poses. They're amazing, to have a sitting
Mhm.
pose, walking up the stairs, putting the arms forward, backwards, arms up. It's they've really done a great job keeping the body deformation so realistic in these poses. So we're really excited to use
Mhm.
them.
Yeah. And you know that we're not saying that you can't use or shouldn't use a fit model for comfort and further evaluation, depending on the product that you do as well. But at the same time, these are really great. And the more they are becoming more evolved, keeping fit evaluation in 3D in mind, which is what we're doing at Alvanon, extremely helpful. All right.
And here it is. So just this week, this arrived. So, when we want to, we always have a sewn sample sewn just so that we can validate what we're seeing in 3D is what's actually happening in real life. With all the work you go through with the fabric testing and the analysis in 3D, we want to see that it's actually happening in the physical. So this just arrived this week, like I said, and forgive the unprofessional photography. That's not my MO. But in reality, it's not a bad first sample when you
Mhm.
look at the scale and proportion and the drape of it. It's not bad.
Yep. Oh, we're feeling pretty good about it. Let's take a look at comparing some proportions. What happens if we put this exact same sample and the importance of understanding body shape and size for your customer?
Yeah. So the reason why we started with the North American women's size 6 is because we have so many body types in the North American series. We have the
Hmm.
petite, the curvy, and then the athletic body. So in 3D, it's really easy just to switch out the form and check the fit of the garment on the different bodies. And so what you're seeing here is the opaque view um, of the petite on the left. That's probably the most noticeable one. Um, the curvy and then the athletic on the right hand side. The curvy one, you can see, she is a little bit fuller through the hip area. So you can see a difference there. The pleats are kind of pulling out in the front, and it's definitely the legs hanging a little bit different in the back. The athletic woman isn't as much of a difference. I was a little bit surprised. I know that her shoulders are a little wider, the waist is a little bit bigger, but she truly is a sculpted, more of a sculpted body. I think it looks better. Let's take a look at the next one, Chris, because that's in the transparent view. Here
Hmm.
we have the reference lines showing so that you can see how um, for the size 6 North American women and the curvy and the athletic, for the most part, those reference lines are still in alignment at the bust, the waist, and the low hip. But look at the petite. It's so fun to see that. The bust level is hitting lower on her, and the waistband is hitting lower, and the low hip. And then look at the overall length of the pants, too.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to show you it with the pressure map turned on so that you can see this is really helpful too, just to see how that fabric is laying against the body. And I think it's most prominent in those areas that we kind of called out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you can
lower.
really see it too, where it's getting a little tighter on that petite just because it's getting hung up on her hip because it's dropping down because of the misproportion at the torso, huh?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, really helpful tools.
Hmm.
And so important to know your body, right?
Right.
Okay, well, let's jump in and start to talk a little bit about garment grading. And and using a standardized full size set for grade review. We really haven't, and we've heard some of our speakers say this too. The value of having, we see it, the value of having the size set for garment grade review as well, for a lot of reasons. This is just an example of one of our series. I think this is the European series, and being able to really see and understand the body shape and the transition of that body shape can help you make adjustments in the garment grade as you need to, and I mean, on top of it, you're looking at a cohesive and inclusive size group that's directly related back to your core standard, which is really important. It alleviates the difficulty of searching for fit models in the range of sizes. And again, that's not to say that you don't need to do that, especially if you have a product that really is movement specific and you really need to understand that you do need to search for models at alternative sizes other than the core. But in general, it absolutely does help in relieving that difficulty. All the sizes are symmetrical and in the appropriate size and shape for the demographic. So even if you were using live model for functionality or comfort for some reason, coming back to the actually let me step back a minute. You need to certainly understand all of the differences in that model in terms of shape and, the asymmetry that we all have depending on how we carry ourselves and just how our body is built. To look at that, keep that in mind, but then come back to the actual size set for technical corrections to be sure that you're not making something that is subjective. So it does remove some of those kind of subjective decisions, which is really helpful. And it certainly provides the opportunity to check problems, areas in fit, and I'm sure a lot of you that have worked in 3D have worked where you've left the sleeve off, for example, and been able to rotate those bodies to see what that armhole is doing. And if you have the size set, you can really see the gapping that might be happening as you're getting into those bigger sizes and what you can think about as a solution to help course correct that. And we'll talk more about that and solutions here in a moment. One of the things that I do want to talk about and that we have talked with a lot of brands about in using size sets, because as a typical rule, unless it's specifically requested, when we look at the data, we really don't see a correlation between size and height. So, for example, all of our standards would be built at a same size, same height across the size. We're looking at the screen here on the left side. Here is this is a scatter plot for all the men in North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. And on the right, we have all the women. And you can see that it really is a blob in the center of each of those, and it's extending out to the sides. So pretty much, you can see where there are different heights for every size along the way. You can have short as well as tall at either end of the size range. So there really is no correlation between size and height, size naming and height. If there was a correlation, then this whole shape would be turned at a diagonal heading off into that diagonal where you see the green line. So this is an important call out to make, because when we talk about grading and grading lengths on pants, this is just an example using a size set, reviewing a pant, and this happens to be a men's pant. And typically I know our grading best practices that we would deliver, we would not grade the length at the knee or at the leg opening. Because when you think about it from a commercialized mass production perspective and all the client or the customers that are in your client base as a brand, if you start shortening the pant solely to fit the size set of bodies, knowing that there is not a correlation between a size number and height, then you're running a real risk of alienating or losing customers along the way. We're seeing the additional length on the bigger sizes, which can be hemmed. We know that the crotch depth is getting longer in those bigger sizes as the garment goes around the body and over the body. But if you're hemming it, then you're running the risk of someone who is larger, taller at that size of the pant being too short. And, likewise, even on the other end, you don't want the pant to be getting too short on the smaller sizes for someone who's tall. So when it comes to length grading and we're talking about sleeves as well as garments, sleeves as well as pant legs, right? It really is a brand decision. And probably the best way to do that, depending on your merchandising scheme, is to offer those different lengths. Men's have it kind of good because the pant lengths are, offered generally in 2-inch increments. But even thinking about, for women's where you can offer a short length, a regular length, and a long length, then you're going to capture more customers that way. But through the grading, it's difficult. We're pointing this out because we've had this question as people are using size sets, and we just want to be able to talk about it and make sure that the understanding of why it's that way is clear. Now, in this next slide, if you wanted to show the visual, say for, if you needed it, you were creating it for a visual asset, or you wanted to share it with designers who wanted to see it in the right proportion. And we actually do this for our own validation when we're looking at a size set. You see the pattern up on the right top of the screen there, where you can see that the hem is being graded to match what the length is, where we want it to hit on the body. So, in this visual, the length at the knee and the leg opening is graded up to reflect no height difference across the size range. So it's been shortened for the purpose of 3D technical review. So keep that in mind for a technical perspective. And I know there's also a lot of brands that have figured this out, and I've had good conversations with them about it as well. But we wanted to be sure that you were aware of it, because there's a couple factors to keep in mind. If your core size length is very long to start with, then this is even going to be exaggerated, right? So keep the core size length in mind, and then also just be aware that for visual perspective and a grade review, technically, if you needed to look at it, you can do this. But when it comes to production, you might want to, you need to really consider what's best for your brand and the feedback that you get on the current grading that you have. So important to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit more about grading and achieving that inclusive fit across the size range. When we're talking about the extended sizes that we have, what really are the technical options when you're talking about grading from size 00 from a core 6 up to a size 22. Let's talk about that, Kim.
Mm-hmm. Right. So going from a core size 6 up to a 22 is really challenging, because they are at a certain point in that size range, it is a different body. I wanted to give you a look at the block that I used to build a jumpsuit, and this has been graded, and it's got a commercial grade on it. So the front and backs are grading the same. And it even though that they're grading the same, there is a nonlinear grade that's been applied to the bust, waist, and hip at different rates. And just like Chris said, the pants are not graded at the hem or at the knee. So I wanted to give you a look at that pattern. And I think for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of breeze through this. Let's go to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
This is the core size 6 on the left. You saw that earlier. That's the overlay of the jumpsuit on the block. And then on the right is the graded size 22. So you can see the similarities. They are all aligning, the neck shapes, the armholes. They're all hitting all of the body landmarks. This is the commercialized grade that was applied to the jumpsuit. And if you look at the next slide, we're going to see what it looks like when we simulate it in 3D. Especially prevalent when you look at the side view. Let's look at that 22 from the side view. You can see that there's a lot of extra fabric in that back length, and the neck is collar is kind of riding up high on the back neck. The front, it looks like the length from the high point of the shoulder to the waist is good, but there's a lot of gaping in the armhole. This is what I was talking about. It is really challenging to achieve that a good fit from that core size 6 up to that size 22. Um, and then this is looking at it in the transparent view with the reference lines highlighted in red. And then I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you can achieve it, or it can be achieved, but the grade is really advanced. So what I'm showing you on the left is the commercial grade we just looked at on the previous slide. Everything is pretty much in alignment with that block, that graded block. On the right is a little bit more advanced grade. So if you can click through, Chris, I've got kind of highlighted what some of these differences are. The differences in the advanced grade is that I'm grading less back length from the high point of the shoulder to the waist. The back neck drop has been increased to prevent it from riding up on the back neck. And the bust dart on the front is getting much larger. And by increasing the size of the bust dart, that is also raising the armhole, which makes it smaller. And so I can get a little bit more coverage and kind of fill in where it was gaping before. This is a challenging grade for somebody to do.
Very
I've been
much.
grading
Yeah.
patterns for many years, but you can't
Yeah.
expect this to be done on a vendor level.
Yeah.
So take
Should
a
we look at the visuals?
Yeah, let's look at the visual. In this slide, you have the commercial grade on the left, and then you have the advanced grade on the right. And what we're seeing is, the back length has improved. It's not riding up on the back neck, especially when you're looking at the side view, and we're getting better armhole coverage and then here's the transparent view of that as well.
Yeah, just a really complicated process. It's not something that, as you said, Kim, for a vendor to do this would take a tremendous amount of training, and across all vendors, it would be very difficult to manage.
Yeah,
But it
and
produces a
just
great
something
result.
else to note about, in 3D, it's great to have the size sets and to be able to do this in 3D. Um, it's challenging though. Even though I can do size sets within 3D, there are some functions that still are not working on 3D. For this jumpsuit, doing the pleats on a graded size set was so challenging that I ended up doing the simulations individually. So, there's still some things that aren't there, and keeping in close contact with your 3D um, software company, letting them know what you can and cannot do. They're really good at working with you and telling us, "Yep, we're on it. It's in our to-do list. We're working on it." So
Yeah.
those things to
I'm
keep in
gonna
mind also.
I'm gonna jump ahead, Kim, to
Yep.
just take a look, and let's talk about the core size. What the really right solution is. When you're talking about even just grading up to the 22, and Kim knows how complicated that grade is, and she can achieve it. But as we said, a vendor probably can't when we're talking about that. And the thing to keep in mind when you're grading clear up to a 22, it's best to really reblock that 22 in this particular view. We're looking at the North American series is actually the same as the plus body 20W. And it really is bridging because the body shape has changed that much, and you really need to keep that into mind. Some people will even start blocking at a size 18. We were using the full range of this for this demonstration. When you look at even what's happening to the bodies here, if you're grading up even into the plus sizes, you would want to probably consider an additional core size there to really do it properly rather than trying to get there through the grading. Do you have anything to add, Kim?
No, I think you covered that well.
Okay, I know we're getting way short on time here. So
Yeah.
we're jumping a quick couple looks at, we went back after we went through the whole process of creating the core size and following all the foundational tools in there that we've been talking about. We went back to AI again to see if it would be possible to explore the idea of, well, we've created this jumpsuit. Now, can AI provide a collection of styles from it? And this is using Adobe Firefly. And a combination of prompts was used. And this video is showcasing the workflow of how it works on generating the new styles from the original design. It is easy to use. It's free if you're an Adobe Photoshop subscriber, if you wanted to play in it. And it's also able to generate slightly differences in new styles, as you can see here. The con in terms of time, even though you're not seeing it in the video, you can really only generate 3 images each time. And if you're interested in the human features, it's not good at human faces. Let's take a look at one other 3D software that we also looked at. This is Ada. We explored this. Ada is an AI-based interactive design assistant for fashion, and it does require only images as input. So what we did in this case is we provided the Ada team with a mood board of color based on our Tech Fest this year. And then we provided them with the jumpsuit design sketch, and we created 3 other sketches. And then, we wanted to see what Ada would generate in thinking about creating a design collection. So in this video, again, it's a really quick run through here, but it's showcasing the workflow of how Ada works and the results that was created by the Ada team for us for this. So you can see that, it used the colors of the mood board, and it created a lot of prints, and it took the designs to different levels as well. So, interesting for creating a collection, getting a viewpoint of ideas again from that. We're going to go back to the actual working with the authenticated garment and creating other styles and how you can leverage that. This is just a video of looking at a workflow example in Browseware, where we have the blocks in there. We also have the jumpsuit in there that was used and authenticated. And then as a part of that, we're taking the pieces and we're creating some alternative and additional styles. And so, this is an example of an option in 3D that could be utilized from an authenticated style and related style developments saved in a master file. And then this becomes part of a digital library. So, one way of thinking about how you can take, once you get to that authenticated style, how you can take it forward. We know as a normal part of exporting any patterns out of 3D, though, and back into 2D to really get it ready for production, the best practice would be to final check and QC all the new style patterns to be sure that the integrity of the key pattern shapes are maintained. But just another example of, using foundational tools in 3D. Coming to the end here, we really are talking about building authentic digital garments using foundational tools. It's so critical to have those tools established as a part of the successful 3D process. Again, trusting what you see and understanding what you see to make the right decisions for the physical product really is important when you're thinking about production of actual physical garments. And so here we're looking at building out that process to get to a digital library. And then the last thing, just to finish up here, where AI fits in that pipeline, assuming all those digital tools are in place, certainly using AI with great potential for design inspiration, and then keeping the integrity of the DPC product as established through foundational tools is where you want to go in building out that digital library. Wow, we just barely made it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks everyone for staying with us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Christina and Kim. That was really great. One of the things I've been hearing about the difference between AI and 3D is that people have been saying that AI is really great for design iteration, but it's really horrible for creating manufacturable information. Whereas 3D is really horrible at creating quick design iterations, but it's fantastic at creating manufacturable information. So I guess my question for both of you is that how do you bridge? I mean, yeah, you can create these great concepts, and I like to say AI inspired concepts. But then what's the workflow for bringing it from AI into manufacturable patterns?
I think it has to go back to using the foundational tools. In the beginning, we were talking about we simply used it for design inspiration because there isn't any technical aspect about it that we could see that we really needed. Once we had the design, then it was still about relying on the foundational tools to get it there. Kim, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with that completely. At least not yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's still hope.
So it goes, it ends up, you end up needing to go back to the block. And so I would imagine that you really don't want to get too far away from your block when you're doing those design iterations. Would that be right?
Yeah, and that was the whole point too of saying if you're using your block to get to your authenticated style, most
Mhm,
people don't want to go back to the block all the time, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
so if they can get to an authenticated style and then take styles from that one, and it kind of is becoming the telephone game, but at the same time, you're still staying close to where you started and knowing where you started, and you always have that to go back to.
Right,
So
right.
that,
Absolutely. When
yeah.
you were taking us through the plus size, the grading, which was really interesting, um, that I, I was thinking to myself, I can't imagine the amount of work this would take to do this physically. Do you even consider doing that type of work physically anymore? I mean, what's the time savings that is incorporated there, and why would anyone not want to do that work digitally than in the physical world?
That's
Go
right.
ahead.
Why would anybody want to go back to doing that physically? It's a huge time savings,
Yeah.
and but it is all about calibrating your eye, getting used to what you're
Mhm.
seeing,
Mhm.
and once you get that down, it is pretty reliable. The downside, like I was saying earlier, there still is a lot of functionality working with size sets in different 3D softwares that's just
Mhm.
not quite there yet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that for whatever reason, especially the backdrop of pants, just never seems to be. There's always some strange fold in the rear that doesn't seem quite right, and the shape of the leg hole always seems to be a little weird. And I think there's still some work that needs to be done by the 3D software to get that quite right.
Yeah.
But from a fit perspective, yeah, I mean, I think it gives you enough as a clear guideline as to what's going to be, especially on the length. I thought that was really good. Yeah,
Mhm.
I forget the quote that people don't get taller as they get wider; they just get wider. Necessarily. So it's a yeah, a good one.
Yeah.
We did have some quick questions. I saw from Hannah Curry. She asked, when will these additional poses become available for the current Alvanon Alva models? And I think she's referring to those different, gestural poses that you were showing.
Oh, the fit functional poses.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, I don't have an exact availability on that. We can certainly get that for you. I mean, it's there now, so it may be available on request. If you're interested in it, I would certainly inquire about it if you have a virtual Alba form.
Fantastic. Okay. And
Yeah.
have you had any guidance on when? There were some questions about the different testing types. Is there any hope for a single physics standard in the future that we see on the? I've heard of a company that's trying to draw connections between, but do we have any hope for a physics standard in the future?
Yeah, well, I think there's been a lot of work, headed in that direction, especially with the U3MA file that's been created. Most 3D softwares will accept that. I don't think Clo does yet at this time, but there's always, and as far as the testing goes too, there's always that human factor in the
Mhm,
testing.
mhm.
So, you're going to have variables, but I think it maybe comes to a point where you got to go, you got to say how close is close enough.
Yeah,
We can
Yeah.
really, beat this to the ground trying to get that exact duplication of that fabric. But there's just so many other factors to consider as well.
yeah, yeah. I think people sometimes look for exact repeatability from one simulation to the next, And I like to say, how many times have you ever gotten the exact same drape when you put the same garment on the same, fit form? It just it's the chaos of fabric. And it needs to be, is it repeatable within reason? Not is it an exact same fold every single time you put it on when you do the simulation. I guess that's my thought on the matter. I don't know how useful that is, but well, great. Anything else that either of you would like to add? Really good session, by the way. I can't tell you how many comments there are in the about how fabulous this session was and how good it was and how informative it was. So a lot of really positive thumbs up from everyone.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Joshua. I think we're good.
All right. Well, great.
This has been wonderful being here and hearing from everybody else too. It's been a great couple of days.
Yeah, I was glued to the sessions before, and Chris is messaging me, "Are you coming on?" No, I'm watching the sessions.
I'm busy. Don't bother me. Well, great. It's wonderful to meet you both, and I hope someday we'll get to meet in person. So very nice to meet you.
Too.
Take care.